Hey guys, this is Vishal. Today I'm going to explain the implementation of RAML specification which we have imported in MuleSoft application in our last session. I'm going to cover three endpoints. First, get products. Second, get products by product ID. And last, create. Here we will replace mock data response for each flow step by step with an actual service call, that is product service API. So let's get started.
So last time what we have done is that we created our product service RAML file in a MuleSoft Exchange. We published that into the Exchange and we use it while creating a Anypoint application on Anypoint Studio. So we imported the RAML file from the design center and created the flow using API Kit router. So our API Kit router flow will be created automatically the moment we import our RAML. So accordingly, based on its Mule flow, it will create the flows. Now the question has arisen last time that can we change the flow names or can we have a custom flow name instead of the default flow name? Well, that was possible. So the thing is, so I this time I made few changes in my router in order to have a custom name of my flow, so that whenever I call a particular API endpoint, so accordingly based on that flow name it will route to my specific flow. So if I open this API Kit router, right, okay. Now if I go to edit, at the same level I have defined the mappings. Okay, so the resource is nothing but our resources, the endpoint. So for endpoint for me, for to get the products, it's / get products. So the action is nothing but the HTTP method. So HTTP method, I'm exposing that get product is over get HTTP get method. Content type is by default the JSON type. So even though you add or not don't add, doesn't matter. And the flow name, last time the flow name was defined when if we don't have any mappings, the flow name is defined by default by router based on the resource name, the method name, and the config name, right? So this time I change it to something which I want. So this product, the flow name I want is / products. So this is my product name. For second one, to get products by ID, again I define the custom name that that products by ID would be my flow name. Similarly for delete, create, add product and update, so these will be my flow names. So these are the mappings I have given for my custom flow names. Okay, so if I go to the XML, that would be like understanding, right? So this is my API Kit config, and within API Kit config this is my mappings which I have given for my custom flows, right? Same resource, action, right, and the flow reference. Flow reference is nothing but the by default, in order to make a call to the other flows, API Kit uses the flow reference. So now we have the custom name, so we'll be calling that flow name using the flow reference over here. The flow reference object is inbuilt provided in API Kit router. So based on that, it is making call to our flow. So if I go to this flow, now I'll go to the message flow. Okay, if I go down, I have changed the name of my flows. See, to update the flow, this is / /update. Similarly for delete, okay, to get products, this is the one. So the name of my flow has been changed, so I have changed it. I have a custom flow name. Okay, add product, create, and etc. for other flows. So this is the way to override the flow names in API Kit router. So here we don't need to change anything regarding the resource name, because the resource name is defined and it's fixed based on our uh, RAML file. So we cannot change this. The only thing we are allowed to change in our in our flow is just to change the flow name in order to have your custom flows to be called from API Kit router. So let's run this and see if we get the same behavior what was earlier. It has deployed. So now I go to this is my console. If I refresh it, okay, now get products. If I click it, so far up we haven't implemented anything, or we're not calling the real-time get product service. It still will return us the mock data which we have given. So if I click on the send, it will still return us the mock data. Now we will move ahead. So far what we have done is that we did not call any real-time service or real-time product service. We are just returning for each of this endpoint. We're returning the mock data or the data what we have given in the RAML file. Now we will replace that with the actual implementations, okay, and see what do we get, or how do we call to the external service, REST service, and how can we get the response from the console side or from the Mule side. So we'll step by step replace the mock data for each of the endpoints, and we'll call the actual implementation. So first of all we go with the get method, and then we'll try for the post methods. So first get method what we have is the simple one, the get products. Okay, in get products we'll just simply make a call to REST service and the product service. The product service is nothing but that's one what we have earlier. This is the one. So this would be our Swagger. So we'll be calling this service actually from our MuleSoft application, and we'll get the data out of it. Okay. Okay, so the first now for product I'll be deleting this mock data. So this transform message has our mock data, so let me delete that. Okay, right, now within a process section we'll be adding our implementation logic. So if I open the Mule palette, okay, we'll just simply first add the logger in order to just to understand that we are in the current flow, this particular flow. So I'll add the logger. Okay, right, within a logger I'll give simple, I'm just going to print out this get products. So mapping is API called is this get products. Okay, it's a simple one. Okay, now we will need to call that service, the product service. For that purpose we have HTTP has two parts basically. So if I go to this HTTP module, right, we'll see multiple things. Like one has a basic security filter. It's like an interceptor, like it will intercept or filter your request and add some extra security stuffs in it and all. Okay, so that is not treated. Loading the static resource, that is also not important for us. Now listener, which we have already taken, this is to listen the HTTP request from outside world. Now in order to make a request to other service, we use this request component within HTTP. This is the request, this is to consume an HTTP service. Okay, so this would be helpful to call our product service. So I'll pull and drag into my process section, will be appended to logger. Okay, now over here I will change this to say product service. I'll change the name, product service request. Okay, now we need to configure it. This is similar to listener, but in this case we need to configure the API base path and all those things, host and port and all those things. So I'll click on this add button over here. Similar to listener, we need to mention the protocol, the host and port, right? So by default the protocol has been taken as HTTP. Anyways, we're running on HTTP. Okay, now the host again. Now if you want to see the host and port for this, so if you open the Swagger, right, this is our host because running on our local machine. This is our port, okay, and this is our base path / this much is our base path. Okay, so I'll go to my Anypoint Studio. I'll mention host as localhost. My port is 9091. Okay, now base path is over here. I'll mention this, the product service. So product / service. Okay, this would be my base path. So this is about my configurations. Okay, I don't need to add anything else. TLS configuration is not needed because we're not running on HTTPS. So for now this is important. Okay, so if I click on OK, that means my request configuration is done. So automatically you'll seeing that this would be your base URL, like local HTTP localhost :9091 / product service, your base URL. Now on top of that, whatever the API or the resource you're going to call will be coming under this path section. Okay, now over here the method is by default for product. Now we are going to call the get products, or just to get the products. So that is anyways a get method, so by default it would be get. Now within path I need to mention the path or the resource name which you're going to call. So if I go over here, right, I'm going to call this get products. So get products has this path, right, so I need to mention. So if you just want to try out and see the actual URL, if you go and click on it, if you execute it, okay, you will see over here the actual URL. So this would be my URL. So this much part is my API name. So / one more, and I'll be adding that. Okay, so if I save, that means the configuration for my request has been done. Okay, now it has some sections over here like body part, headers part, query parameter, URI parameter. This comes into the picture when we are passing anything to the request, right? If you're making a post request, that means that they're going to be a request body. So that body is represented by payload. This is nothing but the input payload what we'll be receiving. We can change it if we store that somewhere into the variable, then we need to mention the variable path. We'll come to that part later on. Headers, in case if you want to pass some extra header or like security related headers or client ID or secret or something, that comes. And query parameters and URI parameters comes into the picture when we are passing some extra param or ID to our request. We'll also cover that part for other resources. As of now, for our get products, we don't need anything. It's very simple get call. Okay, so this is about my configurations. Now again, eventually what we'll have, that will give when we call this product services, this request will make call to actual service. It will get the data out of it and will return back to our browser or whichever it's calling back. Okay, so eventually we'll put one logger just to simply print the payload or the response what we're getting from the request object. Okay, again I'll search for the logger and I'll add this here. Okay, now here I'll switch on the expression mode and I'll just mention the payload which I want to print. So I'll mention something like products response. Okay, and then in order to append, so this one is like this, then payload, right, and I default it in case if it's empty, because right now I'm making call to real-time service. Okay. All right, this is my payload. Now so this, we are done with our first flow configuration for the real-time flow configuration for our get products. Now we'll make a call and we'll run the project and see what do we get in response. Okay, right? So instead of calling the service directly running, we'll see how we can debug the service. Okay, so I'll put the logger or the toggle point over here. So in order to add the toggle point, just right click on the component and just click on this toggle breakpoint. So automatically it will add the toggle breakpoint. Or in order to remove, again right click and just click on the toggle breakpoint, so it will remove that and that breakpoint. Okay, so we will debug these applications. So right click, debug as Mule application. Okay, it will open in the debug mode. It has deployed. This will be the console. Okay, we don't need to open from the browser. Okay, it has deployed. Let me clear the console so we can see if we get any error. Okay, this is my console. I refresh it just to ensure that this is open. Okay, now we have we made changes for the get products. So if I click on get products and I click on send button, that means the moment I click on send button, the trigger the breakpoint will enable. So if I click on send, if you go back, now see, first logger is printed. So if you go to logger, the API called is this one, right? Logger is printed. So now it is waiting for our at this component, request component, because we added the breakpoint. Now just to see what do we have in the request which is going to the particular service, you can see this would be the details as of now. So as of now, if you see, payload is empty because we are not generating any payload, neither we are getting in anything from the request. Okay, so as of now this is empty. This is the variable, this is the keyword which is already provided by MuleSoft. Under this variables, all your variables, the custom defined variables will be present. So if I expand it, we have a 0. We don't have any custom headers, variables created. Attributes, this comes into the picture when we want to read the parameters like URI parameter, query parameter. So these things are provided by this part of the MuleSoft keywords or the standard syntax to access the parameters. Now within a request, now this is the request object for this. Now over here you can get the details like which method, HTTP method, which path, all the details about your request will be coming into this request object. Now we'll just simply move over. Okay, in order to move over, just the shortcut is F6. So I'll click on F6. So it will make a call to the service and move forward. So if I call it, okay, again I'll make F6. So basically what it has done, okay, it has generated some sort of error to us. Okay, it goes to API Kit router and saying that 404. So it's basically saying that this product service is not available. So probably we have given something on the URLs, what we have mentioned is wrong. So that's the reason it hasn't called that. So this 404 has been written from the API Kit. Okay, not actually API Kit. That means that API Kit has routed that uh, the resource from that API Kit router to our product. That means it has come over there. That's the reason we got the request. And from the request side, it has written the HTTP not found. No, this is not the API Kit not found. This is the HTTP 404. That means from here, this could not make a call to actual service because somehow we may fail to mention the URLs properly. That's the reason we got back this response. Okay, so if I just simply FET, that means FET means to switch over from one toggle point to second toggle point, and F6 to go step by step over component. Okay, so I'll go to the normal mode. Okay, just okay, let me check the console. So what is saying that not found. Okay, probably I have not given it correctly. Okay, let me open this, see what we have done wrong. And this is get products, this is correct. This is also correct. Okay, let me just copy from this. HTTP 9091. Okay, so the reason being it has written 404 because as of now we don't have any data in our product service. So if I go back again over here, if I click on this, I execute it from the product service side. Now I'm executing from a product service side. Here itself it has written 404 because this is now we just started our service. So this is the mechanism of our service is something is like although we are using MongoDB at the backend, but the MongoDB will refresh the moment you restart your service. So if you added any data and if you restarted it or if you shut it down or starting it again, that means all the data what you have added earlier will be refreshed. So that's the reason if we don't have any data, it will return back with the 404 saying that we don't have any data or the resources you're trying to access, the product details you're trying to access is not found. So our configuration is actually correct. It's just that we're getting 404, we don't have any data. So what we'll do is that we'll try to add some data from the backend side from here itself and see if we get that data from when we call that API from the product service and Anypoint Studio. Okay, so from the create, I'll just create the object. So if I click on the tryout, we'll have the details. So I'll just pull it from here. For the post, we have it. So this is the body. Okay, and just let me copy from here. Same we got. Okay, we just need to change the type for price, product ID, and then the warranty because that's actually a defect in MuleSoft that it does not recognize the type for integer, number, and the boolean. It's in design centers actually. Okay, so I just execute it. So this will insert the data. Okay, we got the 201. That means we inserted the product details. So we'll see if we have inserted. So we'll execute from this side. This time it should not give us the 404. So we got 200 and we got the data back. Now we will try the same from here. So I will debug my project again. Okay, it has deployed. So we'll clear the console and we'll try to hit our API again from over here. So this is our get products. If I click on send, the first logger is printed. Now we are on request object. I'll just move over with F6 shortcut. So if I do the F6, that it will make a call to my service. Okay, now we reached at the second logger. Now if you see the payload over here, now this is the logger component and these are the MuleSoft keywords. So within payload, now you can see we have generated the payload because the request object is something which generates the payload, which returns us the response. So within the payload you can see we got the response, actually the product what we have inserted from the backend side. So this is something which we'll be getting. So if I just move over again, it will print that. Okay, this time we got something because we failed to print that payload properly. So but anyways, we made a call and we could manage to return back. We could manage to get the response from the product service. The thing is, what we're doing in the logger is that we're trying, like this was something like this. Oh, it has gone. So this was something like we're trying to append our logger with some custom string. We assume that the payload or the response we will get from the request is in a string format. Okay, the concatenation between the two string using 2+ operators will only happen when you know that the payload is in string format. However, in our case, the payload is not in string format. The payload is in array format. So array format does not, or the array, when you have a payload other than string, it does not allow you to concat with some other hard-coded string. That's the reason we got that error. So if you see carefully at the console level, saying that the first one, the product response, the hard-coded string is in string format, but the second one is an array. It expects that the concatenation only happens between the two same type. Is this array or array, two array or date or time, or two string? So that time only concatenation happens. If it's one is a string and second is a array, it will fail. So I change it to normal product payload. We just simply print the payload, nothing will do. Okay, I'll shut it down. Now we'll go to console. This time it should work. Okay, if I go to console now, and this is get product. Okay, if I click on send, so this will make call to your request, get back with the response. It will print the logger. Okay, the second logger is actually printing your payload, the response, and the same one you will get back over here. So this is about our get products. Now we will see how we can pass a parameter to the get products API and retrieve based on only single ID. Now the thing is, in get products, if we have a multiple products inserted, that means we'll get all the products from that API. So if we want to retrieve only product based on an ID, okay, so what we can do? So before that, we'll add one more product in our service from the backend side, because I'm not adding from the console because we haven't implemented it that yet. So we'll implement that, but as of now we'll create one more product so that we can retrieve based on the product ID. So last time we created the product based with the product ID as a 105. So this time I'll change this to 104. I'll change some values so that we can differentiate it. I'm giving some random values. Alright, so I'll enter this one. So this has created the product. So if I go to get products this time, over here I'll check from this side, then we'll go to our console. So we got the two products. Okay, now anyways our service is running. Okay, we haven't stopped it. So if I call our get products API again, this time we should get two array of two objects basically. So if I click on the send, we got the two one. Okay, so if this is the first one, the IBM with the product ID as a 105. So if I just enclose it, the second one we got with the product ID 104. So basically we got the array of product details. Now we will implement the second flow where we can retrieve product details based on the ID. So this one, the products by ID. Okay, so this is what we have. The two transform components within product service is to get the mock data. So I will just simply delete this both. Okay, now we will implement the actual one. So we got the palette. Right, so we'll add that one. So first component again, we'll add the logger just to ensure that we are in that path or that API. So again, I'll just simply give the hard-coded string API called / product by ID. Right, now same second component would be the request component. We'll need to make a request. So before that, we'll be getting one product ID as a URI parameter. So if I go to the console over here, you can see this would be our second resource you're going to call. Okay, and over here we're going to take one parameter. So this would be our URI parameters. So what we'll do is that we'll take that parameter and try to store in one variable. So I'll use set variable component. Okay, I'll drag it to my logger, and over here let's change this display name to something, say product variable. Okay, product ID variable. Okay, the name of this is just a display name, so name of my variable is product ID var. Okay, this is my name. Now in order to access, now we're passing this from URI parameter, so in order to access that parameter in MuleSoft, or so we can write an expression, right? The attributes. So okay, if I just enter the control space, it will pop up. So attributes dot URI params dot product ID. So this product ID is taken from the router or the RAML, because in the RAML we mentioned the name. That's the reason we got the product ID. So if I click on it, so this would be my expression to read URI parameter called product ID. So this product ID will be stored in my variable. Okay, so this is one. Now we will add one more logger just to print the product ID, so the variable name. So over here, okay, I'm just enable the expressions. Now the product ID is in string format, so we can append it. So we'll say product ID where is, then 2 times plus operator, and then now in order to access variables, again we need to mention the MuleSoft expression. So we have a keyword whereas. Okay, again if you don't know the keyword, you just simply go and type control space, you'll get the support. Okay, there is no need, MuleSoft has a support. So I just use var dot, it will whatever the key variables you have created earlier before this component will be present under this one. So if you just type vars and enter control space, it will show you how many variables so far created. So we have so far only one product ID var, so that's we are going to use. So that's it, we're going to print that. Now so far we got the variable stored on the URI parameter stored in the variable, we printed. Now we will make a call to actual service. So we'll use HTTP request of component. I just drag it over here. Now if I open it, the HTTP component, again we need to mention the configuration, but the configuration we have already created for our earlier flow, the same one we can use it. So if I click on the drop down, the HTTP request configuration is already present. Okay, and this configuration is very common till base path, so we can use it. Right now again at this, in the request section, the method is gate. Again we are calling the gate. Now in path we need to mention the request, actually the request URL of the actual service we are going to call. So okay, let me shut it down. So this, now we are going to call this one. This would be our entire URL. So if I go and try it out, so we can get the access, you can get the actual URL. So we stored the product details for two ID, 105 and 104. So if I try it out for 104 and if I execute it, I should able to get the response back for that product details, right? And in the curl section you can see this is your URL. So this, till this we got the base part till product service, and above it this get products, because this product ID get product by ID is the nested resource. This comes under this get products. So first we'll need to add the get products and this product ID syntax. So we'll add this, we'll just take this much. Okay, I'll go to my the added in path. Now over here we need to mention the syntax. Now in order to mention the syntax to call any request by URI parameter, you need to mention that URI parameter the same way we mention over here in RAML. We mention to get product by ID based on this URI parameter. So this is the URI parameter name that we are going to take. That's the reason we got it in the attributes the moment we try to search for our parameter. The same way we will mention it over here. Now the product service is also expecting the name, okay, the product ID, because we got it mentioned over here in our service, okay, that product service. So we'll use the same name over here. So we will mention that the path is get products, and this get products is expecting one URI parameter, so product ID. So this is the actual syntax to call any service which is expecting URI parameter. So the URI parameter name should match with their service name. Okay. Now, so far we just mentioned the method, the configuration, and the path, but we are yet to pass the value. Okay. We just mentioned that this expects one product ID, but we're not passing that value. So in order to pass the value, we got the sections, multiple sections over here, like body, headers, query parameters, URI parameters. We meant to have only URI parameters, so we'll go to URI parameters. Okay, over here we will mention our path. We'll mention the product ID. So if I click on the expression mode, the two ways you have: either you can add it based on here, right, this way, or we just simply remove from here, or you can switch on the expression mode and mention it. So I'll switch on the expression mode and I'll mention product ID equal to, or it's like colon, and the variables, the vars dot, we have it because we stored that variable in the variable. So product ID dot product ID vars dot product ID var. Okay, so this is our expression. So product ID we are going to pass as a vars dot product ID var. So if I switch off the expression mode, automatically, okay, it did not add that. Let me try it out. So actually this is some sort of the DWL expression, so we need to mention probably in curly bracket. Okay, okay, one second. Okay, I'll just expand it over here. This is my product ID and I just want to mention the path. Okay, okay, so product ID colon vars dot. This is how we mention, right? Okay, so if I click on the done again, it will go back to the same place. All right, so we'll save it same way. Okay, we'll keep the switch on expression up, and we going to pass this product ID as a vars from our variable. Okay, now we passed it. We made a request to our product service to get the product detail based on the object, the product ID. Okay, now if we want to add the logger after that in order to print whatever we're getting, we can add it, or that's going to be an optional, but for testing purpose we'll add it. Okay, and over here we'll print the payload. Okay, so this is about our implementation of the second flow. I'll clear the console. Okay, I'll go to my get products by ID. So this is one, get product by ID. Now we got two product ID, 105 and 104. We'll try for 104, and if I click on the send button, it will make a call. Okay, 3 loggers we got it printed. Okay, the first one is API is called the first logger. Second one is when we stored our URI parameter, what we have received from our request in a product ID variable, that is 104. And the last one is that we are printing our logger. So this is our logger which is printing our payload. So if I go back to my console over here, okay, so if we just do so one more thing, I just copy this one and try to execute from the browser itself so that at least we can see the response. right? So this would be our response. So based on my ID, I got my response back. So if I change the ID, okay, let's change from 104 to 105, so I should be able to get the response for my other product details. See, now the product details has been changed. The product ID is 105. So this way, based on the ID, we can retrieve product details. So this time, this is a single object. You can observe that this is not an array. This is the single object what we are getting from our product service request. Okay, now we will go ahead and implement for the create one. This will actually insert the data in our product service. So I'll shut down the application. The reason I'm shutting down every time that it's like if I make any changes, it will load it again. It's like dynamic loading, some sort of that. Okay. All right. Okay. Now in create again, I'll delete this transform message because it is a mock data. Now we will create for the post. Now if we go to our service over here, the Swagger API, in the post we are going to pass one request, the entire request object. So this would be our request object. So this comes inside a payload. So this payload is nothing but the input payload what we have receiving from the request. Okay, so what we can do is that we can simply use the same payload and pass it to our service to insert the data, or we can store this payload into some variable, because in real-time application in the enterprise level you may not encounter with only single payload. You may want to store that payload into some variable, then you want to encounter with other service, or you may want to interact with other service and store their payloads, or work with other payloads. So that time it is important to store the earlier payloads. So that is also possible. Again, in the same way, the way we stored the URI parameters, same way we can store the payloads. So we will see that now. Okay, now again we'll add the logger, because this is the standard process I'm right now following. Not necessary every time to add the logger. Just now we'll just quickly do that. API always create. Now I'll create the one variable in order to store the payload. So I'll use set variable. This will every time create a new variable. Okay, I'll just change the display name to input payload variable. Okay, over here I'll say request var. Okay, this is a request object. Okay, and I'll switch on the expression mode. Now over here I'll mention that how to retrieve input payload or the request body from the from actual request. So in order to actually retrieve the request, so if you see the message MuleSoft event message, we got one MuleSoft payload, one is attributes, one is variables. That's actual structure of a MuleSoft message or MuleSoft event. So there is two way, like both are the same one. One is that we can do like message dot payload. Okay, that is also possible if we use a message dot payload, and so far we haven't created any payload. That means this would be input payload. Okay, or instead of, if we don't want to get confused between multiple like payload and message dot payload, you can simply mention the payload. That is also possible. So any request, so when you make a request to this create object, you're going to pass that request body. So that request body will be treated as a payload. So in our word, or in the terminology, the way we use the terminology we use is called input payload. Okay, so for now this would be acting as an input payload. Okay, so this is nothing but the request body. So I stored it in my custom variable. Okay, so this is my variable created. Now we'll just make sure that we got the payload stored in our variable. So we'll just print it. So I'll add the logger after it, and over here now I'll mention the expression to print that. So since we are stored in the variable the vars dot request var, again it will show you the variables created so far. So I'll print it. Now we will make call to our service. So for that, http request, this one. So I'll append it to the logger. Okay, again configuration is already present, so I'll choose that. Now method name will change to post. Okay, now the path we'll need to take from our Swagger. This is the path actually. Okay, the create one. So we'll add it / create is the path of my API to create the object. Now the important is this body represents the request body you want to pass to that request service. By default it has mentioned the payload. So if we don't make any changes and we just simply call this service, it will still insert the data in your product service. Why? Because this payload is still acting as an input payload, because so far till this request we haven't generated any payload in our process section. So this payload hasn't overridden yet. So this payload still has the request body what we have received from our MuleSoft request. But since we stored our input payload in our request, we can mention that path over here in my body. Okay, now I don't want to use directly payload in my body. I want to use the variable which I have created and where I stored my request body. So I will just delete this. Okay, and I'll use the expression. This is again the expression, right? So this is all like MuleSoft expression in the DWL 2.0. okay, here since we stored our request object in variable, again in order to access the variable, just control space, select vars dot request var. So this is, I'm saying that take the request body from this request variable, because this is the place, or this is the variable where I have stored my input request. Right, this is done. We'll not be passing any headers, query parameters or URI parameters. We just need to pass the body that will be going to pass. Okay, we got it created. Now we'll just simply eventually add the logger to get the positive response whatever we get from the request. Okay, that's a payload. Now we will run it. We will see what do we get and move over. Now what we can do this time, we can just simply go and debug it. I'll just add one more debug point over here. Second is at the request level. Just debug since it's quite big, so in order to understand it properly we'll just debug it. Alright, so I'll run as a debug, so product service app, so it will open in the debug mode. Okay, it's deployed. Now just enlarge it. I'll clear the console. Now what we'll do with that, we'll go to our console, the create one. Now inside the body I need to change, because the type of this price, product ID and under warranty, because this is actually a problem with the design center. Maybe it's not with the latest release, it does not recognize the type for this, so we'll just change it. Okay, now if I click on the send, it will go to my, okay, now we have reached to the first logger. Okay, now we'll just go F6. Now, first logger has been printed. Okay, this is API called. Now we got the request. Now we'll be storing this request at this level. So if I just go and click on F6, so it will create a variable and will be stored in that variable. So if I go to the vars, now in the vars you can see size change. So if I go and see in the request object, we got the request, right? So this is our request object and we stored it in request var variable. So now we are on the logger. So if I go F6, it will print that object. Since our request is in JSON format, so we got our request printed on our console. Okay, this would be our request. So this is actually the data. Okay, now all right, so it will throw an error. I'll show you why. Okay, now we'll move ahead. Now this will make a call to our actual service. So if I go and press F6, this will go. Now this has failed. Okay, I'll tell you why. Okay, we'll just move over now. Okay, this is failed, and I'll just simply finish the debug. So just click on F8, so it will finish it. Now the reason we got internal server error, so basically if I go to console back, we got the 500, and if I go to parameters, we say we got the 500. So this detail hasn't changed yet. So the reason we got the 500 is that if you see the body, we still mention the product ID as a 105, but the 105 product ID is already present. That's why we could not enter the data. That's the reason we got 500. It's saying that the product ID is already present. Okay, this is somehow response. The service is written back that you cannot enter the product details with the same ID. So we might need to change that product ID to something like which is already not present. So we stored for 105, 104. We'll just change to 103. Okay, so I just simply clear the console. Just simply clear the console, and again I'll run it. I'll click on send. Again it receives. So we'll jump over to the component, and now we got into the payload, second logger. Now the request. Now this will make a request. Now it has made the request. We got the payload. Now you can see that this is the new updated payload saying product is created. So if I just move over the logger, okay, so if I go down, this is the last logger we printed saying product is created. So the same response I should go back and should be received at this level. So if I give here this product is created with the 200. Okay, so this is what we get. So this is what we have inserted. So now this object is created. Now we will verify have we created this object or not. So we'll go to our API, the product ID, get product by ID. Okay, we'll insert 103. Okay, and if I click on send button, it should not debug actually. Okay, we got the details. So again it does not show. Okay, I'll go to the normal browser and change this to 103. Right, this is the new details, which is the product ID, and the same details we use because we did not change it. So we got the new object created. Right, now if I just will call the second API, okay, the get products, this means this time it should return, or it should return with give us the three objects, 105, 104 and 103. So this is my URL. Okay, I just copy it from here. I'll go over here and paste it. Okay, this is the simple get URL for to retrieve all products. So if I click on it, probably it will debug. So I'll just simply move over. Okay, we got three objects. Okay, this is actually array. So this is one object 105. This is second object 104, and this is third object 103. That means whatever we are inserting, we are getting back from our APIs. That means the behavior is as expected. In the next session, we will implement the REST2 calls, the REST2 products API implementation, and we will see how we can drive all these configurations from the property file.